I have often wondered if I will be remembered for the laughter or for the controversy. Life has a way of balancing the absurd with the profound, doesn't it? I lived as if I were constantly walking on a tightrope between the two. Now, in these final days, with the light of my years flickering softly, I realized that I was always both, a fool and a thinker, a clown and a philosopher. I have worn many faces, but the truth has always been in between. I've been here in this quiet manor in Vevey, Switzerland, for some time now. The rhythm of life has slowed to a crawl. The grandeur of the stage and the roar of an audience have long faded into silence. These days, I listen only to the sound of my own breathing and the occasional creak of the floorboards. At times I am grateful for the quiet. After a lifetime of chasing laughter, solitude feels like a balm. Other times, it feels like a slow, unrelenting suffocation. I sit in this chair staring out the window at the Swiss Alps, and I wonder if this is where the great Charlie Chaplin was meant to end up, a man who spent most of his life with his face frozen in a mask of joy, now trapped in the stillness of age. The mountains have become a daily reminder of time's indifference. They stand tall and eternal while I grow small and frail. But don't let me mislead you. I do not regret my life. No, if I have learned anything, it's that life is a series of contradictions, and we must learn to laugh at them all. Humor, after all, is born out of the absurdity of existence. I once said that life is a tragedy when seen in close-up, but a comedy in long shot. I feel that more now than ever. When I look back at my youth, those early days on the vaudeville stages, or when I first donned the bowler hat and cane, it feels like a different person entirely. I was so full of energy, so certain that the world would bend to my will. How wrong I was. The world does not bend, it spins and spins, and all we can do is learn to dance in its dizziness. It was the dance that saved me, really. The Tramp, that funny little fellow with his ragged clothes and boundless optimism, became my salvation. I saw something in him that I never saw in myself. Innocence. Perhaps that's what the world saw in him too. He could walk into a room filled with misfortune, and somehow by the end of it all leave with a smile. I was never so lucky. The Tramp, he wasn't just a character for me. He became my mirror, my escape, and eventually, my prison. You see, there's something about fame that devours a person. Something insidious. I tried to hold on to myself, to the man behind the mask, but after decades in the limelight, it's hard to separate the two. I became Charlie Chaplin, the icon. But what about Charlie the man? Sometimes I wonder, did I live for myself? Or did I live for the Tramp? The answer, I think, lies somewhere in between. The Tramp was the man I wanted to be. Free, careless, untouchable. But the real Charlie Chaplin was much more complicated. There were moments, yes, when I believed that I could be both, but as the years went on, the weight of my fame began to suffocate the real man beneath it all. I became a myth, but the flesh and blood man behind the myth was often lonely, tired, and searching for meaning beyond the laughter. But it wasn't just fame that burdened me. No, there was always something more, something darker lurking in the shadows. The politics, the accusations. It still amazes me how quickly a person can go from being adored to being despised. I think about those years in America, how I was forced to leave the country I had called home for so long. The headlines screamed of my supposed disloyalty, and just like that I became an outsider. I had made them laugh, hadn't I? But that was not enough. Laughter, it seems, is not enough to shield you from the fury of nations. That bitterness remains with me. I would be lying if I said it didn't. The irony, of course, is that I always sought to avoid politics. I never wanted to be a political figure, yet my films, The Great Dictator, Modern Times, they spoke louder than I ever could in interviews or speeches. The truth is I had always sided with the oppressed, the downtrodden, because that is where the comedy lay. Comedy, after all, is a rebellion against the powerful, and I couldn't stand idly by. The Great Dictator, I put my heart into that film. It was my way of striking back at the cruelty of the world, of Hitler, of fascism. And yet, when the war ended, I found myself alienated, criticized for being too bold, too political. In my final days, I've grown to see the futility of it all. What was once righteous anger has mellowed into a sort of weariness. Did I make a difference? Did my films change anything? I don't know. But I do know that I stayed true to my art, and perhaps that's all that really matters. Art is a strange thing. It doesn't always yield the results we hope for, but it lives on in one form or another, and that's more than most can say about their work. Una is by my side, always. My dear Una. I met her when I was already far older than I had any right to be, yet she has loved me with a devotion I cannot comprehend. There's something about her love that feels like a miracle. She could have had anyone, and yet she chose me, an old man with a broken heart and a troubled past. I see the worry in her eyes as she tends to me. She's always been able to see right through the masks I wear. I think she's afraid to lose me, but I am not afraid to go. It's strange, this feeling. I thought I would cling to life, like so many do, but instead, I find myself at peace. I've lived a long life, a good life, and though it hasn't always been easy, it has been full. My children, my films, my loves and losses, they all stand like monuments in my mind. I can see them so clearly now. I do wonder what awaits me after all this. There was a time when I would have laughed at the idea of an afterlife, of anything beyond this mortal coil. But now I am not so sure. Perhaps there is something more, something waiting just beyond the horizon. Or perhaps not. Either way, I am ready. Perhaps the afterlife is simply another stage, another performance where we shed these earthly trappings and find something more profound, more eternal. Or perhaps we simply dissolve into nothingness, as so many philosophers have suggested. Whatever it may be, I am not afraid. The Tramp. I suppose he will live on long after I am gone. Maybe that is the true gift I leave behind. Not the films, not the awards or accolades, but him. The little man with the big heart, always stumbling forward despite the odds. I like to think that people will still watch him long after they've forgotten my name, still laugh at his antics, and feel the warmth of his simple, unbreakable spirit. I remember how people would always ask me if I was like him, if I, Charlie Chaplin, was really the Tramp. And I would smile knowing that the truth was more complicated. The Tramp was who I wanted to be but never could. He was pure, untouched by the world's cruelty. I was not. I carried the scars of a difficult childhood, of betrayal, of exile. But the Tramp, oh, he walked through life with a lightness that I could never quite attain. He was free in ways I never was. And yet I loved him. I loved the way he could make people laugh, the way he could turn sadness into joy. That, I think, is my greatest legacy. Not the wealth, not the fame, but the laughter. I hope that people will remember me for that, for the way I could make them laugh even in the darkest of times. In the end, that's what I hope for. To be remembered not as Charlie Chaplin, the man, but as the spirit of something timeless. The laughter, the joy, the small victories in the face of life's tragedies. If my films live on, if the Tramp continues to stumble through the hearts of generations, then I will have done my part. And if I am forgotten, well, I suppose that's all right too. Life is, after all, just a fleeting shadow on a much larger stage. My part is over. The curtain is closing, and soon it will be someone else's turn. The stage is eternal, but we, the actors, are not. I leave the stage now with a smile, the same smile that I wore for so many years. The final joke is this. The laughter wasn't for the audience. It was for me. It always was. That was the secret to my success. I laughed at life even when it hurt, and in that laughter, I found the strength to carry on. And so, with that, I bow one last time. Good night.